Joining me now is Katie Barlow. She's the host of the Words Matter podcast, as well as the founder and co-editor of DC Circuit Breaker, which of course watches the DC Circuit Court. She's also a practicing attorney, so she's the perfect person to have on because the other aspect of this is not just counting votes, it's also counting lawsuits. There are plenty of them out there flying all over the place. I heard one person describe the Trump legal efforts as basically these are press releases with filing fees, that a lot of the cases really aren't going to go anywhere. What's your sense about these cases?
I saw that too. I believe that somebody on Twitter said all of these allegations that don't contain provable facts are basically a tweet with a filing fee. And that's true. The Trump campaign has filed numerous lawsuits in many of the battleground states, including Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, and Nevada. And both state and federal court judges across the country have thrown them out. Because what you need in the United States to have a successful lawsuit at the beginning, just to step into court, is allegations of provable facts, evidence of provable facts, showing a violation of the Constitution or one of our statutes, and lawyers who are willing to walk into court and swear on the papers that they accurately reflect what they believe to be true. And so far, the Trump campaign has not been successful in any of those battleground states in any of their lawsuits in showing that and demonstrating that to the courts.
Katie, one of the legal victories they've talked about, though, was the case in Pennsylvania where they were able to move closer. They make it sound as though there were no observers there. Basically, all they did was let them go a little bit closer. Isn't that the case?
Right. That's exactly what happened in Pennsylvania. There were allegations that they didn't have members of the Republican Party. Traditionally, we have members of both parties that are allowed to watch the vote counts. And they didn't have members of the Republican Party or didn't sufficiently have access to watch the vote. And the vote watchers, the tally watchers, were 10 feet away. That was my understanding, part of a precaution, given that we're in the middle of a global pandemic. And the judge allowed the Republican watchers, and I believe everyone, to be able to move to 6 feet away, again, within the socially distant range under our national guidelines from the CDC about what's safe under COVID conditions.
We remember 2000, where it did end up being 9 justices who basically decided the election. Back then, it was just one state. It was the state of Florida. It was hundreds of votes, not thousands of votes. But there's been a lot made out of the fact that part of the legal team representing George W. Bush consisted of, at the time he wasn't this, but now Chief Justice John Roberts, Associate Justices Brett Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett. They were all part of the legal team. And there was a lot of talk about how these folks were going to be on the Supreme Court. But do you see any of these cases actually making their way up to the Supreme Court?
Well, if you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said that it was looking likely that something would bubble up to the Supreme Court. And it is important to note there is one case based in Pennsylvania that is currently pending at the Supreme Court, and it's about a small number of votes that were postmarked by Election Day, by November 3rd, and received by Friday, November 6th. And right now, the Supreme Court actually issued an order this week saying that those need to be segregated, those ballots need to be segregated and not counted for now, while the full court considers what to do with those. And the Secretary of State from Pennsylvania has confirmed that that's true. Those ballots are not a part of the total count in Pennsylvania right now, but there is a small chance that the Supreme Court decides to take that case up and does something with those ballots. But our understanding is the number of those ballots wouldn't sway the state either way in favorability for Joe Biden.
So, Katie, give me your best sense. I mean, you're good at watching these sorts of things. How long does this whole legal aspect of this kind of drag on before it becomes an eventual outcome where people have to determine that there's going to be a 46th president of the United States?
Well, really, it's until every single state certifies the results of their election. And because the United States allows each of the states to set their own election laws and their own timeline for how they decide when they're going to certify their election results, it's going to vary across the country. But in about a month, every single state will have to certify saying, this is our final vote count, whether that includes a recount like the Trump campaign is suggesting they're going to push for in Wisconsin, or like in Georgia, where they say that they're going to do one voluntarily. By about a month from now, every single state will have to certify its election results, and then everything will be pretty much legally buttoned up at that point. And I should also note that our Constitution says no matter what, on January 20th at noon, the president's and the vice president's term ends. And there's nothing that anybody can do about that. It automatically ends at noon, no matter if the new president takes his oath of office or not. The old president's term ends at noon, and nobody can change that.
Katie Barlow with some great insights. Thanks so much for joining us.